As of the time I'm recording this, it is December 1st, 2024. The reason I'm mentioning that is because it's like Thanksgiving weekend. I originally, when I was working at Martin, had asked for off the Wednesday through Sunday of Thanksgiving. It's easy for family and friends to come in from out of town and for us to take a vacation without taking too much time off. Usually, if you have a holiday and then you have one day after that, no one really wants to work it, so it's easy to take off if you ask far enough in advance. Now, when I start with JB Hunt, they told me, no problem, we'll go ahead and honor that. But my schedule got screwed up this last week. Normally, if I work overnight, if I start like 10 p.m. on officially Tuesday night and I'm working through Wednesday at like noon, I should be able to finish my day. And that would not require me taking the day off on Wednesday. But when they flip around my schedule in order for me to meet with my manager, who comes in at 8 a.m., that means that I suddenly am going to be working on an off day and I'll have hours available, which is the reason why I got a little frustrated this last week. Now, on the note of my manager, you've heard me gripe and complain in the past few episodes. What's interesting to me is that as soon as I did that video, he kind of did an about face. He started answering my calls when I call him. He started replying to my emails. Now, still his managerial style is not exactly in line with mine. His communication style is different and stuff like that. Anyway, basically, the long and the short of it is I'm probably going to request a new manager again. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt right now because I don't want it to seem like retaliation for what happened on my Thursday, which I will get into here in a moment. Now, when I last did a video update, I think I mentioned that on my Monday and Tuesday, I was sent out for loads that I basically finished with 2 hours left on my clock. So what I would prefer to is pick up, like if they send me someplace that's close by, let me go ahead and pick up the trailer and start heading out. That way I can shut down someplace on my way to the rail yard. But the company doesn't want you to do that. They would rather you find a safe haven, shut down, and then start up the next day or whenever your schedule becomes, you get 11 hours again, which I understand. All companies basically are the same way. Even though it means you have to stop what you're doing and then go back later and pick up the trailer. To me, it's just not as efficient as it would be. And the company could argue, well, if we assigned you something now and you picked it up, then you wouldn't be arriving at the rail yard in 4 or 5 hours. You'd be arriving there in 15 or 14 or 15 hours. Yes, but if it doesn't have to be at the rail yard for 2 more days, what does it matter? Anyway, all right. So it's just not as efficient as what I'm used to, working with in the real world. All right. So here's the thing. I shut down with 2 hours left on my clock, and I was really just wanting a load. Now, the office ended up, when I called, surprised and got a hold of my manager, and he told me there's 4 videos he needs to go over with me that basically go back to the previous 3 or 4 weeks since I started with him on his team. And I was like, okay. And I think I mentioned this before. The videos, they are something that the forward and the driver facing camera basically they record together. And it could be triggered from anything, but there's a company that JB Hunt pays to go through the videos. And if there's anything that meet their criteria, they will send it to a manager who will review it. So these are 4 videos they would want to review with me for some reason. And that happened later in the week. But because of that, they're going to want to bring me in at the time my manager is in the office at 8 a.m. Well, if I start at 10 p.m., they're not going to want me to drive overnight and just constantly work until he comes in and then let me meet with him at the end of the schedule. They're going to want me to stop what I'm doing and come in to meet with him at 8 a.m., provided that there is not more work they can send me out for on their own schedule. Because the way JB Hunt looks at it is, oh, this is an urgent safety concern. You have to come in and watch these videos. But not if it means us taking you away from work that we could get you to like pick up someplace and then bring it back and send you out for over 500 miles and it's working for the company. If these are urgent safety concerns, stop what I'm doing and do one of 2 things. Either bring me in directly from wherever it happens to be if these are so urgent, or 2, have the ability for me to watch the videos and review with a manager through the internet. Like a lot of companies do with Zoom or Skype. If you did it via Zoom, the manager could share their screen, show the video, ask your opinion. And furthermore, they could record the conversation in case something ever came up later, as opposed to pulling me into a meeting with the manager at the office and then having them just cover things and then it not being documented. Just saying. You want to talk about efficiency? There's a lack of efficiency. And it's also extremely annoying to me when it throws off my entire schedule. And that came to a head. And that's something that, I mean, and I don't want to sound like it was a fight or anything like that, but it was definitely something that did not make me happy. So anyway, I shut down, found my safe haven, and I shut down for my Tuesday. And the load that came through, which when you set a DRT, a driver ready time, the system always pushes it way later in the day than I would ever want it to. I guess because most drivers would rather start later in the day. They would rather start at like 5 or 6 a.m. and drive until 5 or 6 p.m. They don't work like I do, where they come in as soon as their 10 hours is up and then they just hit it hard for 13, 14 hours, maximize their clock, and then shut down. They don't do that. So the system automatically screws me up constantly by changing the system. I will literally put my DRT in there. I'll come back and hit refresh on it an hour later and it's changed. So if you get to a rail line and you finish a load, if a load is terminated, it will reset your DRT. And so you have to be very aware that if there's any changes to anything like that, they will reset your DRT and that will screw you up. Because if it says you're starting at 5 a.m. and I have set it for like 10 p.m. the previous day, and it's set for 5 a.m., they'll send me out on a load that doesn't need to be picked up until like 4 a.m., which is, it totally throws me off. So here I am, shut down. I set my driver ready time as like 10 p.m. And I get a load that is across the state and pick up at 4 a.m. And not just a pickup. It says it's a pickup, but it's not a pickup because there's a scheduled appointment time of 4 a.m., which means probably it's a live load since it says you must bring a container and doesn't have me leaving with a container number leaving. Okay. So basically, I had finished my day 2 hours early. So it's technically like 8 p.m. And I set my DRT, I'm sorry, technically 8 a.m., not 8 p.m. So I set it for, what was it? Like I finished at like 10 a.m. So I set it for like, 8 p.m. to start up. And all of a sudden I have this like 4 a.m., which is only like 3.5 hours away. Plus there's a time zone change. So if I'm going from, if I have to be there at 4 a.m., I would normally leave around midnight in order to get there about 3:30 a.m. But because I have to go back into Central Time, it backs up another hour. So basically I have to leave the equivalent now of 1:30 a.m. in order to get there in time. So anyway, I was so frustrated. I was like, can you send me something that is better? And I called and talked to my manager about this. I said, can you send me something that works better with my schedule? He said, this is going to work fine with your schedule. I'm like, no. I said, I'm going to have to like leave like 4 hours later. He says, well, just do that. I'm like, if I do that, and he's like, this is the load that is best. You were planned for that because you're the best driver for the load. Here's the thing. When a company tells you you're the best driver for the load, you might be one of many drivers that could do it. And it's not necessarily that you're the best one for the load. It is that you are a good enough fit for the company and they don't want to have to spend time changing some things up. So you may not be necessarily the best for the load, but you're good enough and you're going to be good enough for it. You're adequate. You're a fit for it is basically the way it is. That's my interpretation of it. Whenever they say you're the best for it, I'm like, no, I'm a fit for it, which means I'm available for it. But what's interesting is it meant like going 225 miles across the state from Knoxville to Clarksville, Tennessee, which is right up at the Tennessee border past Nashville on 24. So if anybody was on the north side of Atlanta, anywhere from, let's say, Calhoun and farther north, they were going to be closer to that load than me. So anyway, they assigned me this. They were not going to budge. And I thought about starting my clock at like 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. and driving overnight and just getting there at midnight and sitting there just to be, just to do it. Because I don't want to get into this habit and establish a precedent where I go in whenever they tell me that they don't look at my schedule, they don't care about it, and they just send me in someplace and I'm sitting there on the clock for hours and hours and hours, or I end up having to sacrifice that and push later and later into the day because they want to have me be a fit for a particular load when their system changed my ready time. When their system changes things up on me, every single person I've ever spoken to at the office, if I ask, can you do anything? They'll say, let me talk to the planners. If I talk to my manager, he says, no, you're the best fit for this. No, I'm not going to talk to anybody. That's one of the reasons I want to potentially, that's another reason I want to get another manager, because he doesn't budge on things. He will not, like I ended up asking him also. I have a cracked tooth that I got, a cracked tooth back in July when I was working at Martin. And I had a dentist appointment scheduled on the day before Thanksgiving. And it was at 11 a.m. because I figured I would be able to finish my day. I'd go back, I'd check in, I'd finish, go on into the dentist and get things resolved. But when they pushed my schedule later and later and later, it was going to be that I was not going to be able to make this dentist appointment anymore. So I called and said, can you help me out? Because I have this cracked tooth. I need to get it looked at. And he was like, no. If you need to take a day off, you need to take a day off. I'm like, I don't need to take a day off if you just schedule me right. If you just schedule me to come in earlier, like I have on my schedule, and like my hours, like the driver ready time I put in the system that changed automatically. If you schedule me the way that I would like to work, and you schedule me, like it just, to me, it's highly annoying. So, yeah. I'm probably going to request another manager, because it's just, he will not budge. He will not even ask. And I'm like, it would be a favor to me so that way I could get my tooth looked at. Well, long and the short of it, I had to cancel my dentist appointment. And if you cancel after 24 hours in advance, then guess what? They charge you a fee. I didn't want that to happen. So I ended up canceling it early when I realized I was going to be screwed up and sabotaged here. So anyway, they were not willing to budge. So I shut down there. I started, I told them I was going to start up at 8:30 p.m. and basically minimize my clock. And that's when they sent me this stupid thing. So I ended up having to start at 12:30 a.m. Anyway, I knew for a fact that if, I just felt it, that if I got to that Amazon in Clarksville for the 4 a.m. appointment, it wasn't going to be ready. I just knew it. So anyway, I got there. I made better time because I left a little bit later, assuming that the rain that was scheduled, or I left a little earlier because I assumed that the rain that was projected to be there was going to be dangerous and I was going to have to slow down a little bit. But no, rain ended up being totally fine, almost non-existent. So made it across the entire state, and I got there just after 3 a.m. So anyway, they said, drop your trailer in this one spot and then hang out in bobtail park, or in semi parking, tractor parking. And I said, okay, how will I know when the load's there? So we'll call you. I'm like, okay, do you want my phone number? And they're like, okay, yes, let me have your phone number. We're like, seriously, at Amazon, I don't know what it is, but it's almost like if there is a way to hire someone that is completely unintelligible, to throw them on a speaker that only has bass and rattles when it happens, and then put this into a middle of a train yard, not a train yard, a loading area where all you have is trucks idling in the same low frequencies. It's like all you're going to get is just, it's going to sound like Charlie Brown's parents. It's just, and plus it's, except that you can't understand them. And you can turn off your engine. You can try to, excuse me, repeat that, and over again, but it's just highly annoying. So I don't know if that's criteria for Amazon hiring, is that you have to be unintelligible. Somebody, you're not going to understand them at least 2/3 of the time. Anyway, so I went over there and I sat down, and about an hour and 45 minutes later, I was really starting to question. I wanted to see what was happening because it was 4:45 a.m. and my load was supposed to be ready at 4. So I was like, all right, I'm going to try to find someone that I can at least verify that they have my right phone number. Because when I gave the guy my phone number, he said, yes, give me your phone number. Then he responded something, and I was like, I'm sorry, what? And then he said, you're okay, you're good. And I'm like, huh? I didn't catch anything you just said. Could you repeat that, please? Dead silence. Could you repeat my phone number back to me? Dead silence. Because they'd already disconnected me and the arm is going up. So I'm like, I guess I'm supposed to go in. So what I did is I wanted to find someone that I could verify that they have the right phone number on me. So what I did is I got out, started walking around. I found something on the inside of the driver lounge that said, you need support. Then go down to this door that's between that's near loading dock number 126 or 150. So I went to 126. And after waiting inside this old cage for a while, somebody finally sees me, and then she gives me 1 second. Then she comes over after a little while, and I give her my load number, and I said, "Oh, really, I just want to make sure you have the right phone number so that way you can call me and reach me if the load's ready." She says, "Okay, well, then give me your load, and I'll just at least check. Let me start there, and we'll see if it's ready." I'm like, "Absolutely." So she disappears, comes back, and hands me a piece of paper and says, "That load number is this. The trailer's ready." I'm like, "Oh, the trailer's ready?" And she's like, "Yeah, it is." And I look at the trailer number. I'm like, "This isn't a JBHU trailer." And she's like, "That's your load." I'm like, "Could you double check the numbers and letters on my load?" And she said, "No, it's right. It's just that's where we put your load." And I'm like, "That's not a JB Hunt trailer." And she's like, "It should be." I'm like, the numbers didn't match. The numbers matched something else. And I didn't know what it was. So I jumped in the truck and went around and looked at it. It was an Amazon dry van. So first of all, it's not even an intermodal Amazon trailer. So I can't even take it. Second of all, it's not a JB Hunt. It's an Amazon. So it's like, what's the deal on that? So I go back to her, and she gives me the one finger after she sees me. And then it takes a little while. She comes over and I said, "Can you double check this? Because I want to make sure things are right. This doesn't seem right to me." And she says, "No, that's your load." And I'm like, "Why was it put in a non-JB Hunt intermodal trailer though?" And she said, "Because we didn't have the right securement." She called it D-track, which I know of E-track, and I know of like D-rings, but she said D-track. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. But anyway, she said we didn't have the way to secure the trailer when we closed it up. And I'm like, so you put it in a completely different trailer? She's like, "Yeah, we didn't have the right things to secure it. So we just put it in a different trailer. You can take that." I'm like, "No, I can't take this. You can't take the entire dry van and put it on an intermodal chassis, or onto a train and send that. It doesn't work that way. You have to take off the container off the chassis." And she just like, "Well, that's the load that matches your load number." I'm like, "Okay, let me call the office." So I call the office and I tell them this, and they're like, "Okay, I've never heard of that happening before." I'm like, "Me neither." And so you ask around the office, and they're like, "Yeah, we haven't heard of this. Double check that the numbers are right." And I'm like, "I did," and she told me they were accurate. He says, "Well, find out again." So I went back to her and I said, "Humor me, please. Could you run the same numbers?" And this time, as opposed to her writing in her really bad handwriting, I wrote it as in block letters as easily as best I said. And I said, "Can you please run this again, just so we can make sure that there's no typos or anything?" She said, "Okay." And she goes off and does it. Comes back and says, "Yeah, that's your load." I'm like, "My load is in the Amazon dry van." She's like, "Yeah." "Okay, well, we need to get this changed over. I just got through bringing you an empty." She's like, "Yeah, the people that do that don't even come in until day shift at like 6:30. And then by the time they come in, they'll take a little while to get into their morning, it'll take them a little while. It'll take them an hour or two. And then they'll look at something like that." I'm like, "So we're talking like it's probably not going to be transloaded into another trailer until like mid to late morning." And she's like, "Yeah, that would probably be the earliest." I'm like, "Okay." So I call back the office and I tell them this, and they're like, "All right, who's telling you this?" I said, "The shipping clerk." "What's her name?" I go back and I ask her name, and she tells me it's a very weird spelling. And so anyway, I tell them, and they're like, "Okay, well, let me find out what we need you to do. Hang tight and I'll message you." About 15 minutes later, he messages me and says, "Wait for the load." I'm like, "You seriously want me to sit here and wait my entire clock, my entire day on something that's not going to be ready until like late morning?" So I'm not about to deal with this, because it's illogical. It's stupid to just have me sit there and run out my clock. Anyway, so I am so frustrated at this point. I sit there and I wait. I'm waiting there like 3 hours and change. And then the manager that I know that comes in at 7 a.m., I start messaging him and say, "I am stuck at this location. The office will not send me out, and they're not going to get to me. They're not going to have my load ready until like mid to late morning. Can you call me when you have a second?" He finally calls me, and I tell him the situation, and he's like, "Yeah, that is really weird. Sometimes we have you run an Amazon dry van, but it won't. You're right, it won't go to the rail." I'm like, "Yeah." And it was going to across the country to California. So it's like, that's not going to work. So, I mean, I've gone to California before, but I'm not going to be driving that through JB Hunt, intermodal. So anyway, he says, "Let me see what I can." I'm just kind of getting going. And there's only 2 other people in the office because, light in the office for Thanksgiving. He said, let me see what we can figure out and I'll get you moving again. I'm like, all right. So he contacts me in a bit and it's like 4 hours into my wait there. And he finally, and I'm sent a new load. And that load is to pick up in Dalton with my empty and then drop it in the Fairburn rail yard. And then once I'm there, bobtail over to Palmetto and wait for my manager. And I'm like, so they want me to meet with the manager today. Okay. But the problem is I've already blown my entire clock in my drive out there. Spent the 2 hours and like 45-ish minutes that normally you would spend, at customer sites, non-driving. And I've already wasted that at Amazon too. Let me see if I can get down there. So I hit the road. I'm trying to get down to Dalton and it's already tight. Like if I am sitting there in cruise control, driving the way, cruise control is going to make it give me the ability to go to 65 miles an hour as opposed to 62 on the pedal. So I am doing my very, very best to get down there. There's not really a whole lot of traffic. Through Nashville, it slows me down maybe a few minutes, but not much. But when I get to Chattanooga, there's putting up stuff on the sign that says there's debris in the right 2 lanes. So move over to the left 2. And it starts creeping along. GPSs are routing me on back roads, but I'm looking down and those things are crazy also. I'm looking down over, the bridges and stuff. And it's just, I see everybody pulling off, everybody going that way. I'm like, it's not going to get any better. So I just decided to stay the course and stay on the interstate. Sure as the world, when I get through it all, I'm looking at the time, my arrival time, which updates, and it matches the arrival time it would have been if I would have taken the back road. So basically I just stayed on the interstate and went creeping along as opposed to best case scenario, which is avoiding traffic lights. When it routes you on back roads, it doesn't put in delays for traffic lights. It just is like, okay, well, this is what way it would be if you were driving on that. So I got there, and as soon as I got to the Dalton place to pick up, it was Shaw. I knew full and well I was not going to be able to make it to the office because I had if I had 15 more minutes on my clock, I could have. And that would have been pushing it if I had no traffic in my way. Technically, it said you had an hour and 50 minutes on your clock. And it was an hour and 45-minute drive. Well, I know full and well that by the time you go through traffic lights and you get on the interstate, if I'm slowed down at all, which you do when you take certain turns going off of one interstate, like 85 onto 285, 285 onto 85, you're going to slow down some. You're going to hit some traffic lights as soon as you get on the back roads at Fairburn to get to the rail. And that's just to get me to the rail, and that's not even to get me to Palmetto. So I knew I needed more time, and I knew I was not going to be able to do it. So what I wrote is, I said, okay, I'm not going to be able to make it to the office today thanks to the delay at Amazon and some traffic in Chattanooga, but I'll catch up with my manager tomorrow. Well, JB Hunt will not have this. If it is a safety-related concern related to videos, they will pull you in immediately. They will pull you off the road. Your schedule be damned. They don't care. Now, I have an issue with this because it means stop what you're doing and wait for your manager to come in. Doesn't matter if you come in at, 1 a.m. or you come in right when the manager's there. It doesn't matter. You're going to have to wait for the manager to come in because they consider it to be a safety thing. They have to go over you so desperately and, urgently that you have to come in. Stop what you're doing right now. We have to address this with you. Interestingly enough, they didn't call me in because some of those were dated back 3 weeks ago. They didn't see the reason to call me in on these urgent videos before that. They didn't see the reason to not send me to this Amazon load and route me directly back to Atlanta. No, because, that wouldn't be good for the company resources. You have to pick up a trailer and bring it back that way. Don't just stop what you're doing and deadhead back or drive your empty back. By all means, don't do that. That would cost the company too much money. Furthermore, have you ever heard of Zoom? It's this wonderful technology that people can use to face-to-face communication, communicate with each other. And then people like a manager could even share their screen and show a video if they need you to go over something urgently. Ever heard of that? You can also, furthermore, hit record and record the entire session in case it needs to be approved of or go over something like that with a manager later, as opposed to having a face-to-face interview where this is not recorded. Anyway, I find inefficiencies in the JB Hunt way. And I also find it's not always ideal for the driver, but then most of the time people will tell you if they're a trucker that, it's not about the driver, it's about the company. And I get that. When I shut down, basically, I started driving down. I shut down the pilot flying J at exit. Oh, geez, what was that? It was like 3:17. I stopped there because I was like, I'm at least going to be on my way, and that's going to not get me into that craziness below about exit 300, where it's hard to find a parking space. 297 on 75 is nuts. I would just be able to shut down, start my day, drive in, and then I had a choice. Either I could start my schedule at the regular time, drive in and sit there and wait off the clock for 7 hours, which I told my manager that's unacceptable, bringing me in that early. Can you at least send me back out? Nope, we have to address these safety concerns because these are important. I'm like, seriously, if it's that important, don't route me over 500 miles through Tennessee doing different loads going from Clarksville to Dalton and then down to JB Hunt. If they're that urgent, bring me in immediately. So I don't buy that they're that urgent, from a company perspective. They're just, wanting you to do it because that's their way. Anyway, at this point, when I told him that's unacceptable, he says, no, it's unacceptable to look at your phone while you're driving. I'm like, I don't look at my phone while I'm driving down the road. Anyway, so I was told, I had to come in for this meeting, which meant that instead of me starting up at 8 p.m. or whatever, finishing my work schedule and then going in to meet with the manager, I'm going to have to not come in at 8:30 p.m. I'm going to now have to come in at 5, start my day at 5, drive down through Atlanta traffic, drop in Fairburn, and then sit in there and wait for the manager. That just completely screws up my entire day. The reason why is because I had taken that Wednesday off so that way, because I figured I'd be starting at Tuesday night and I'd be able to finish my entire day without taking the Wednesday off. Because basically you start, technically at midnight on Wednesday, but I'm starting 3 or 4 hours earlier than that. So I'm still working on my Wednesday. But when they push my schedule that late, I'm not starting until 5 a.m. on that Wednesday, which means I would technically not finish until dinner time on Wednesday, which totally defeats the purpose because I needed to have that Wednesday off for my schedule. But then when I'm starting overnight, I would be able to finish it by noon, which means I still have the time for my schedule. So I had asked for the day off originally. And then I said, oh, cancel that. I don't need it all. Actually, I can work that Wednesday and still make it to my family events and stuff like that are going to be starting up later. But when they pushed it that late, no. So anyway, I pick up, I drop off at the yard. I drop off in Fairburn, then I bobtail over and I go ahead and shut down. And because I know I'm going to end up having to wait to talk to my manager. So I get there and I do my post trip and I go into the office and I'm there waiting for him at 8 a.m. He's like, give me a little bit of time. I'll, get into the flow. And then I'll contact you. And I had requested, instead of meeting with him at 8, if the manager that has always had my back and looked into and to help me and stuff like that, who comes in at 7, I asked if he could do it. And they said, no, your manager has been the one that's been looking over and collecting these videos. He's the one that needs to go over. I said, okay, well, fine. I would prefer it to be him, but whatever. Well, it ends up being that they did decide to let that manager cover it with me, with my manager standing up next to me. So what are the 4 videos I was called in for? Every single one of them, I'm creeping along the road. Basically, if you take your foot off the accelerator and it creeps along at a few miles an hour, every single one of them was me creeping along. Usually it was someplace like in a rail line where I'm trying to, where you have to do the in gate on the app where it basically says you have to program in everything and then you have to bring it up. And when you get to the rail yard, you bring it up and you basically log into your phone and then you click, give me the in gate and then you scan it. Well, every single one of those, it was me creeping along someplace and it was me either looking at the tablet, going through and pressing a button here or there, or it was me doing the same thing on my phone to get the in gate ready. Now I understand you're not supposed to do anything of the sort while you're driving. So technically, yes, I'm absolutely in the wrong. The company has also had people that are creeping along like that, only a few miles an hour, that they explained to me will look someplace else and they'll turn the wheel and then crash. And that literally happened earlier the day that I met with my manager. They said we had somebody that came in that literally crashed. And they said this just happened. So I don't know if it was earlier that morning or what, but they came in and talked to them about distracted driving because they were looking at their cell phone. And after they had covered this, and the guy was like, I'm not going to do that anymore. 20 minutes later, he left their office, went out, hit the road, and then literally hit something on the road because he was distracted. So anyway, I understand the company and their zero tolerance policy on that. So I had to sign a document that basically said, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm like, you know what? That's fine by me. Because the reason why I was in every one of those videos, and it's like, can you take me back to this? I'm like, I don't have an excuse other than me trying to make the end gate work. Or if I am driving and I'm literally 200 feet away from the end gate, I'm in the middle of like 3 lanes and creeping along, and there's no one around me, and I know that I'm up there. If I look down to grab my phone and then look back up here to unlock it, that is the distracted driving thing or whatever. But if I grab my phone to end gate it and I look down to do that, distracted, that's when it records the video. So if that isn't acceptable, fine, I won't do it. I told him, I said, hey, this isn't that bad of an adjustment for me, because what I'm trying to do when I'm here, because every one of them except one was at a rail. There was 2 at a rail line. One of them was at a customer where I was approaching their front security gate, and there was like 4 lanes on my side, and I was in one of the middle ones, and I'm creeping along, and you see me gathering up paperwork and gathering up things because I was just going to try to have it ready when I got up there. Well, okay, I don't need to do that. That's fine. That's fine. I will spend the extra few seconds once I come to a stop doing that, and the people at they'll wait for me. Fine. Also, and I said, okay, that's totally fine by me. It just means one less thing for me to try to, normally when I get up to I try to have the app ready. So if I was grabbing my phone and getting it ready so I could end gate, it's me trying to not avoid having to delay somebody behind me. But we're talking like a matter of seconds. So if it means keeping my job because I am waiting a little bit longer, fine, I will do that. I will keep my job and just, not grab the phone a couple of seconds early, or not grab the tablet and make some sort of adjustment on there. So that's fine. That's fine. I will just get things ready. And I even said, well, this isn't that big of a deal, because every single one of these times that the system recorded me, I'm creeping along, approaching something, and it flags me as, driving distracted or whatever, even though I'm trying to get the app or whatever. It doesn't care. All it says is that you're not focused on the road. That's fine. That's fine. I will just absolutely concentrate on the road. No ifs, ands, or buts. And if there's going to be a delay from me taking an extra few seconds with the app at the gate when I'm stopped, fine. At the end gate, that's fine. If it means waiting there with security for a couple extra moments, that's fine. That is perfectly fine. If that means that's what that's the acceptable line or whatever, that means it takes one thing off of me. I don't have to think about trying to do something else while I'm driving. That is fine. So I said, okay, well, your system loves sending me out messages. And the system, I even said also, it started crashing the last 3 days and bringing up on the loading screen. He says, is that what you were doing? I said, no, probably not in these situations, but it's been doing that, which is also a distraction. And he's like, okay. Anyway, not like that's ever going to be an excuse anyway, because they want you to pre-plan your entire trip. And then when you drive it, the GPS is just a reference, but they want you to pre-plan everything and do things on your own. And that way you don't have to rely on the tablet. But I told him, I said, the tablet's a distraction when it just starts restarting itself and whatever, puts something up there, it says something or beeps or whatever. And he was like, okay. But again, not that that's an excuse. And then I even looked over at my manager and I said, your system loves to send us messages all the time. Sometimes there's daily safety things. Sometimes it's something about traffic. Sometimes it's something about the load. I said, if I'm driving down the road, I'm not going to be looking at the tablet. So if it's important, got to call me. Tell them to call me, because I won't be, any of that. And he just kind of nods. He's just nodding at me when I say that. Because, if I'm end up reassigned or something like that after I go 200 miles, I'm going to expect the company, I will expect the company to compensate for that, because if they just say, oh yeah, we took this load off of you and put something else on you, you kind of got to tell me if it's after I've already hit the road, because if you don't want me looking at the tablet, And I'm sure the company won't. I'm sure that they're going to just say, no, you should have been, if you saw a message coming, you should have pulled over and addressed it. We'll address that when it happens, if it happens. Anyway, so I had this meeting. I signed the form that said that, if it happens again, it can lead up to termination. That's fine. Again, I'm Generation X. I don't have to look at a damn phone. I don't have to look at a device at all. They want you to do all this stuff. There's delays in their system, and it's just whatever. If it means me not having to pick up a phone and having to deal with anything other than drive, I am so fine with that. I'm so fine with that. But when the thing pops up messages and beeps and it wants you to look at this and, you have to do this process now and you have to do this process and stuff like that, then you feel the urgency to do it. And I just won't feel an urgency to do it. I don't care. So anyway, when I finished with my manager, he said, all right, you want me to send you a load? And I looked at him and I said, no, it's all right. And he said, you still have 10 hours left in your clock. I'm like, no. 2 reasons. Number one is I told you I had already planned to take the day off, and then I canceled that and I decided to work it when I could work overnight and finish my day before, noon. But when I was finished, if you finish the day at like 6 p.m., that doesn't work with my schedule. So, but also sitting there waiting for a manager comes in, my energy just sits there and drains. So at this point, because very little of the time was actually spent looking at, talking to the manager, a lot of it was spent with them typing stuff in and me just standing there watching them. Well, my energy drains and I'm just sitting there. So as opposed to me telling them, no, when I was working overnight, I didn't need the day off. But now that I've been working, by day, I do need the day off. And I didn't want to get into that. So since I was standing there tired, because I'm just sitting there waiting for them to finish the thing and I'm going bug-eyed and my brain is fading. Because also there's a thing called circadian rhythm. If you wake up at the exact same time every single day and you work that time and you go to sleep at the same time every single day, you can adjust to that. But when it means going from day to night to day, flipping your schedule back and forth, it messes up with your biological, your innards and your circadian rhythm, your internal clock that tells you when you can sleep and be awake and whatever. So that to me was one of those things where when he says, yeah, you want me to send you a load? I'm like, no. At this point, I said, I'm too tired. Yeah, I said, I'm fine now, but if you sent me out right now, because my schedule is very much different than it normally is when I'm overnight, I'll just get tired later. And if I'm sitting in this crazy like day before Thanksgiving traffic, I'm just going to sit there and my energy is going to drain. Well, sure as the world, guess what happened? Traffic was crazy that day. So a lot of 285, 85, 75, 675, 20, 575, all the major interstates started going yellow and red. So it meant that everybody was creeping along. And I knew full and well that if they were to send me something, it's not going to be far out of town. So it's not going to be like really worth it. And I'm going to spend most of my time sitting there in traffic where they do not pay you except for the miles you drive, or less than that because we're talking Rand McNally. So I would just end up sitting there in traffic, watching my day tick away while I'm not actually getting money, not much money at least. So to me, I was like, no, I'm done. And he's like, you still have hours left? I'm like, yeah, I'm done. So I went ahead and left. Here's something that ended up happening though, and I'm going to pretty much leave you with this. JB hints about safety. But yet their truck shuts down if it idles more than either 1 to 5 minutes, depending on the truck. The trainer that I worked with, hers was 1 minute, mine's closer to 5, if the temperature is between 40 and 65 degrees. Okay. But when the truck shuts down, you run off the battery. There's a battery inverter that powers anything you use on the plug that's plugged into the power inverter. And if it goes for more than an hour or something like that, it will shut off the power inverter. Or maybe the voltage drops below to the point where the power inverter is going to be shut off. This is a safety issue if you were on a CPAP, which I am. I think I mentioned before, even when I was a martial arts instructor in the best shape of my life at like 220 pounds, flexible, strong, whatever, in my 20s, I would hold my breath in my sleep. Even though you don't hold breaths when you're doing punches and kicks like that, I was doing it. So I don't know why, but I ended up having to have a sleep study because I hold my breath in my sleep. And so this And normally what ends up happening is I pull the cover directly over my head and I sleep completely under the covers because, it's like a snorkel. It brings you the air and you're laying there in bed and be just fine. But when the CPAP shuts off and you're under a cover, first of all, you have this mask that basically just is closing off and you can still breathe out through it. It's not designed for you to breathe through when the air is turned off. It actually is resisting. So as opposed to you breathing normally, which is, obscured or whatever because of, the nature of being, sleep apnea, but then it's putting a mask over top that doesn't even allow you to breathe in very effectively. So to me, this is a safety related concern that I'm going to call the office about and see if there's anything in the world they can do to make the truck not shut down. They're probably going to tell me no, but just in case there is, because to me, I find that to be a bigger safety concern than probably anything else I've run into at the company that they have warned me about, other than like distracted driving or going too fast in driving conditions. Oh, well, okay. All right. It is, I'll say, because those things will kill you very easily. Just like, wearing a mask that is not turned on and giving you air will also kill you. These are all very, very big concerns. So I'm going to contact and ask the office about that and see what they say. Because to me, that's a big one. That's a big deal. I had the time off, and I had put in my driver ready time. Apparently, I got the day wrong. I had put it in through for my Saturday, which is normally the day I come back. I was after meeting with my manager and stuff like that. When I put in my driver ready time, I got my days screwed up. I put it in for Saturday as opposed to Sunday's date, and so I am with I'm out doing my time off thing with one of my friends at the time, and all of a sudden I receive a message: you have been pre-assigned. Tonight at 10 p.m. head to Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm like, what? And so I looked at it and I realized then that I put in my driver ready time wrong. Either that or the system changed it automatically, which I would presume that it was me putting in it wrong because it wasn't at like 5 a.m. It was at 10 p.m. I said it'd start at 10 p.m. So anyway, I had to stop what I was doing in the middle of bowling and call the office and said, hey, I got my days wrong. I'm not actually starting tonight. I'm starting tomorrow. Can you take that load off of me? And they're like, oh, yeah, no worries. We can do that. And so anyway, so that is the latest. That's the latest in what's going on with me. In other news, when I got frustrated and had to shut down and wait not just 10 hours to restart my clock, but 17 hours because I had to start later to meet with my manager, I started putting the word out to other trucking companies. I started saying, let me see what's out there again. And I know I was only doing this like the month previous. I started doing this like in early October, and I was hired by JB Hunt the second week of October to start at least. I understand that it was only 2 months ago that I worked for Martin, and I had put in a 2-week notice and then started with JB Hunt the second week of October. But there are just some things that just seem horribly inefficient. I like the money I make when I'm moving, but I don't like the fact that in order for me to get moving, I have to engage and have to get help from the manager that's not supposed to be over me anymore because my own manager doesn't do it. I don't like the fact that the system changes the information I put in there. I say I'm going to be ready this time. It changes it to like 7 or 8 hours later for whatever dumb reason. And so I have to constantly look at it to make sure. And if the system changes it right after I put it in there, it's like, oh no, you don't mean to start up at 10 p.m. You mean to start up at 5 a.m., don't you? And then it changes it. And then I'm assigned something that's based on that startup time. And then my manager won't even double check it and won't even bother saying, oh yeah, well, I can put something else on you. Because the information that, you're the best driver for this is based on the time that you're starting up. Based on the time that you're started up, based on all the different criteria that falls, you're the best driver for this. But if the system changes my time that I'm available, I'm not necessarily the best for it. I'm a fit for it, but it's not best for me. So yeah, I have a few issues. that I need to get addressed. And what I'm probably going to have to do is finish at a customer site, submit everything, and then start putting in driver ready times. And probably 5 or 10 minutes after I leave customer sites, I'm going to have to pull over to the side of the road and then double check and make sure my DRT is set right. Just because, I don't want to, I don't want to end up having it be off by like 8 hours and because the system decided to reset it for whatever stupid reason. Anyway. All right, that's it. We'll see what happens this upcoming week. Thanks for watching.